Please join me in welcoming the director of Bodies, 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 Halina Reijn. And the writer-director of Women Talking, Sarah Polley. And the filmmakers behind Everything Everywhere All at Once, the Daniels. Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. And the director of Our Father the Devil, Ellie Foumbi. Let me start by saying this is ridiculous. Such an incredible group of filmmakers. I love this night. So every year at the Director's Close-Up, we close with The Spirit of Independence, where we bring together filmmakers nominated for Best Feature, Best Director. And, you know, for all the talk of like the crisis the film industry is in, when I look at the filmmakers here tonight, it's so inspiring. I love your movies, every single one of them. So thank you for being here. And such an incredible like diversity of storytelling and filmmaking here. So let me also say, just to start, I hope this will become conversational. I will pepper you with lots of questions, but really, if you start talking to each other, that's even better. And I think that might happen. We'll see. With that, I mean, let's just go back to the beginning. I know you've all been talking lots about your films, but I would love to hear each of you talk briefly about really how long ago you started working on these films and what the actual seed for it was. Maybe starting with you, Ellie, and we'll just go down.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say what an honor it is to be here, to be on this panel with this incredible group of filmmakers and people that I admire, so start with that. My story, Our Father, started back in 2015. I've said this many times, I'm gonna say it again. It's really started with my dad's work at the UN and him giving me access to a woman who worked at an NGO who was working with kids who had survived the genocide. And I wanted to understand, you know, what life after, is it possible for people to rebuild their world, their lives after Civil War? And I became really interested in child soldiers, and most of the films that I'd seen were really from the perspective of kids who were recruited during the war. And I was so curious, like, what happens to these children as adults? Like, who do they become? Are they able to reintegrate society? And so those were the seeds for Our Father the Devil, and I wanted to tell it from the perspective of a woman. And it took another, 4 years for the story to really come together.
Nice, thank you. And to the Daniels, the same question.
Yeah.
Is this something you'd thought of before, like had been sort of gestating on for a while? It feels like something that could have been lurking in your brains for some time.
Yeah, I think because we came up in music videos, like we had like tons of little things floating around we always wanted to pursue, but like this movie started when Dan went and saw a double feature of The Matrix and Fight Club, and then he was like, man, it'd be so cool if we could make a movie like The Matrix, and then I was like, duh, but...
It was at the New Beverly, Quentin Tarantino's theater. He was doing a 90s month, and I was like, just reminded again of how bonkers movies were back then. Those were like big budget movies, like massive swings, and I was like, oh my God, we gotta bring that kind of filmmaking back, but for a tenth of the budget, because no one's gonna give us, you know. Fight Club was like $60-70 million. Matrix was, I don't even know how much, but like,
it was the same. It wasn't like crazy. It was like 80, I think. That's crazy.
Not crazy, $80 million.
But the funny thing is, like, our movie started from a very like silly place. It was just the verse jumping concept that we started pitching back and forth, just like doing something strange in order to get a power from another universe. And then that was like 2015, and so I guess the same time. And
independent movies take so long, guys.
Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah.
But it grew into something so personal, but it started not there, you know? And it was kind of like just the process. We started putting things that we cared a lot about into this
Yeah,
sci-fi
because like
concept.
right after 2015, that was when,
The internet started ruining
Facebook
America,
started ruining
yeah.
everything. Discourse was falling apart. Everything was chaos. It was. I don't know. We wanted to put all those feelings into something, and we realized, oh, this multiverse movie can hold all of this, and this was very interesting for us to try and dive deep into it. And we always start a movie with a question that we don't know the answer to, and this one was the question of like, how do we survive in the noise? And then they became more specific. How do we see each other in the noise? And that was sort of the driving force for 6 years. I don't know how long it took us to make this movie. Did you guys was it 2015 for you guys as well? Okay. Okay, cool. You guys are actually good at filmmaking. That's great. That's good.
Wait, before we move on to the Daniels, could you talk just a little bit more in depth about your writing process together? So 2015, you start working on this. It's like fragments. How do you do it? Like in terms of your working together collaboratively?
Yeah, so it was just a kind of idea we were kicking around for a long time. We started really working on it like the winter of 2016, and that was a bunch of outlining, which we do very collaboratively, just kind of bouncing ideas back and forth and trying to figure out like...
Yeah, a lot of diagrams, a lot of drawing on chalkboards. It's a lot of like walking and talking. We're very like mobile writers. I don't know if you guys are like this, but we have to be moving. Like I bought a skateboard recently and we just skate all the time while we write, and that's like, people say like it's either in the shower, when you're driving, or when you're walking. That's when like your best ideas come up, often for us at least. And so that's we outline extensively together, and then usually that's when we divide and conquer, separate the scenes, and start just trying to surprise each other, surprise ourselves. I'm really bad at staying to the outline. It's usually like I'm the reason why the first draft was like 240 pages. But yeah, I know, wow. I feel bad for the people who had to read that first draft. But yeah, and then from then it's just like, we see all the ways we failed, and then we throw it all away and we try again. And it really is that. Like we do throw a lot away because I think what we're trying to, like I said, we start with a question and we don't know the answer, and if this draft doesn't answer the question, then we know it's totally wrong. It's not efficient. Don't do this. Don't copy anything we're saying. Do the opposite of everything we're saying.
But it does become like, for me, when it becomes problem solving, not just like anything could happen, then it's like exciting because we're just trying to fix things and solve problems, not just blank sheet of paper. So we did that for years, just rewriting and changing stuff.
So Sarah, 2015 or?
Yeah, it was actually 2015, and I was at the same screening of The Matrix, and I wanted to make The Matrix 2, but I thought, like, what if it's women in a barn Matrix? It's so weird.
Right. I totally. The red pill is when they leave. Yeah, it makes so much sense now. I love this.
No, it was actually, it was 2018 when I first read the book of Women Talking by Miriam Taves, and just completely fell in love with it and felt like I had so much to learn from it. And I found out that Dee Dee Gardner and Frances McDormand had the rights, and so I reached out to them, and the same day they reached out to me. So it felt very, very meant to be. Yeah, and I was just really riveted by the idea of walking into this conversation that took on literally everything. I mean, these women take on the whole world, and faith and forgiveness, and what their community is going to look like, and what does democracy look like, and how do we heal wounds within us, and that we've inflicted on each other, and how do we create a different kind of world. And it just felt like there was nothing that book couldn't do in terms of where it challenged me and made me use my imagination. And so, I mean, primarily The Matrix was the inspiration, but then the book was also helpful.
I do want to say that Women Talking is incredible for all those reasons. We try to touch everything as well, but we had to go to all these other universes. You managed to pull it off in one room, and I am just like so jealous. It's a fantastic movie, and it does touch all those things. And I told Sarah this, I think, a couple times, like last time we saw each other. It feels like competency porn. You're like watching people who are competently talking about a problem and then solving it. that doesn't exist in the world anymore, and so that feels like a fantasy. They're like, oh, thank God, they're fixing their society, and it's gonna be okay. It was so cathartic. Anyways, I like shitting on ourselves. So, but honestly, because your movie's amazing. Next.
He's joined our publicity team. It's really helpful.
Yeah, for me, it was a very different starting point. I think so. I was on stage all my life as an actress, playing Hedda Gabler and all these very depressing plays. And then I made my first film, which was Instinct, which was a very dark, erotic thriller. And then they sent me the script. So I was like, no, because I'm an art house, complicated person. I cannot do this horror thing. But then we started.
Who sent it to you?
A24.
Okay, well, that's pretty nice right there.
Yeah, but I didn't know exactly who they were. Sorry. Yeah, I know you guys have the hats and the things and the merchandise. I didn't. So, but then they are very seductive, and and so we started a conversation, and then they were like. You can change whatever you want, and then we started to talk about I can spoil, right? I can spoil.
Yeah.
We started to talk about no killer, and then I was like, that interests me. And then they knew that I came from the theater, so they were like, why don't you start to rewrite it with a playwright? And they found Sarah de Lep, which is a complete genius. And once we started to talk, I so enjoyed it. And after all those Hedda Gablers and Shakespeare's and Chekhov's, it was so fun to do something so light and just make people laugh and so ridiculous. And I loved it, and it changed my life. And now I live in America.
Wow, amazing. So there's so much to talk about. There's so much to talk about on all of these films, but I just want to leap again with all of you to talk a bit about casting, because your films have, every single one of them have incredible casts. I mean, Sarah, maybe let's jump to you. You've won the Altman Award at the Spirit Awards this year. Incredible ensemble cast. I'd love for you to talk about how you cast it, how you like the core leads, but then I'm also really intrigued by the child and teen performers that you have, and also Ben Whishaw. I mean, just talk about the casting.
Yeah, how'd you find your casting director?
Thank you for the question, Daniel. My casting director is my brother. That was set up. My brother, John Buchan, is my casting director. He works with Jason Knight. And my mother was a casting director. So I really grew up literally on the floor of a casting office, listening to conversations about actors. And she trained my brother. And so it really, first of all, the Altman Award was so unbelievably meaningful because it felt like it was also for my mom, who isn't here, and who trained my brother, and who is such, obviously, a huge influence on me. So it was just an amazing, of anything that we could have received for this film, that was the most meaningful thing. And also such an amazing acknowledgement of the role of casting, which is such an incredible thing that this organization does, that, that gets ignored, the craft of that. And so it's just thrilling. And I think so with Johnny, I sent him the script. It's the first person who reads it in its most nascent state, and we begin talking about actors, and he begins educating me about actors I might not know about, and he makes me watch literally everything so I can see someone's entire body of work. So by the end of 6 months, I have a pretty good sense of who's there, and then he starts looking for the people we don't know. And he sort of insists on seeing people we haven't heard of and doing huge searches. So for the roles of the younger women, Auche and Naiche, who are so integral to the film, Johnny did a huge search. And those two actors, Liv McNeil and Kate Hallett, this was their first acting role. And Kate, as we were shooting, became more and more the center of the film and ended up in the editing room becoming the narrator. And actually, Kate is here tonight. If you want to stand up. Kate Hallett, where are you? That's Kate. Here. There's Kate Hallett, yeah. This was her first role. And she really became the heart of the film and really found the voice of the film through her. And then with the other actors, it was really finding out how to create this community. And so I met with people multiple times. We read scenes, we workshopped them, and it was really trying to figure out how these people would work together, not just who was right for each role. And it was a very long process. It went on for many, many months.
So they were kind of auditioning for you? These really...
Some people were auditioning, yeah.
Cool.
No.
I mean, I think the cast is impressive in your film. It's crazy. It's like a theater ensemble. It is as if they've been acting together for years and years and years. There seemed to be so much trust, and yeah, I was very impressed by that.
I think one thing that really helped us, we had a green room, so we didn't have trailers. So everybody went from the hayloft basically to another hayloft. And it became this community, and they really knew each other, those people. So
I'm curious, I don't mean to jump, but did you rehearse? What was the rehearsing process with?
Yeah. Thank you. So for a week on Zoom, and then a week, I always have this really prima donna-ish request, which drives everybody crazy, which is I have to rehearse in the dressed set 2 weeks in advance so that I can know.
You get that? Jesus.
Yeah, because it's the one thing I'm
notes
really
here,
difficult
people.
about. It's the one thing I'm very difficult about. But it is a problem, and it does cost money, and you have to give up other things to get it. Like, that's the truth of it. But
And how long do you do that?
a week or 2 weeks. Yeah.
That's a gift.
Could you also talk about casting August Winter?
Yeah. So August was an actor who I didn't know, and we read quite a few people for the part of Melvin, and I just remember there was just this quiet, authentic kindness to August that I'd never really seen anything like it. Like, August has quite a magical presence, and they just really helped me understand that character. They were so insightful and curious, and it was an amazing collaboration to figure that character out with them.
Beautiful. Halina, let's go back to you, because you also have an incredible ensemble cast.
Yeah. Yes, so my first film I made with my best friends, so it was very different. So I was really scared for this, because I was like, now I have to really work with people that I don't know, and also I don't know anybody in the United States who isn't super famous, you know. So I felt very much out of my comfort zone. And the first person I met on the whole project was Amanda Stenberg, who plays Sophie. And it was immediately love at first sight. And she also would come aboard as an executive producer, so it was way more than just acting. And since I come from the theater, and I grew up in communes and sort of cult-like things, I love, operating in a group, and I don't like to be the boss, so I'm very collaborative with my actors. And I told them, I was like, I'm gonna create a little theater ensemble, and I begged for as much rehearsal time as I could, also on set. But A24 was amazing with casting, I have to say. They brought Rachel Sennett, which is, an absolute force of nature in my film, I feel, and who really also is on the forefront of capturing the tone of the film, which is pretty hard because it's like comedy, but also horror, like God knows what it is. And then I was really sure the only person I knew I wanted to have was Pete Davidson. I just knew I wanted to get him in my film. And it was and he was like, yeah. And I said, but did you read the script? He's like, no. I'm like, but wait, what? He's like, yeah, but I like A24. I'm like, oh, that's how it works. Great. And so,
Seriously, he said yes without reading the script?
well, he
That's
said that
amazing.
he dies pretty soon. He said he read it up until there, and he never finished it. But never. Also not. So on set, he would say that all the time. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. So, but I loved working with him. But all of them were amazing. Maria Bakalova. I mean, they were from all over the place. They didn't know each other, and I tried to do the same, where we were all together in a hotel, and we were kind of like, it was still COVID with all these rules, so we were in a bubble, and that really helped. They all got to know each other, and they were playing that game, whatever it is, werewolf or whatever you call it, but they were constantly playing that. So I was like, great. And I also took the whole thing from the theater, where I sort of forced them to learn all their lines as if, they had to go on stage. And we did a run through, and I don't know anything else, so that's how I work. And I had them watch all these art house movies and talked about Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf all the time. They were like, wait, what? But no, but they loved it. it paid off, I think, because the acting style is great and it's fearless and it's very together and collaborative and acting is reacting and all of that. But they would also ask me at the first day, like, so which festival are we going to? Because it was a very different generation. So for me, it was a very different world as well. But I really collaborated with them, being 47 at the time or 46, and having to make a film about Gen Z. Of course, it's super important that I ask them, like, what is it all about? And do you think this is a funny line or do you want to change it? And I did a lot of improvisation. And so I really depended on them, 1,000%.
Wow. Well, it's an incredible cast. And yeah, that everything you described happened, that sense of immediacy and friendship and friends being trapped in a dark house. And the mix of humor and horror, it's fantastic. So, I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once, your cast, which just swept the SAG Awards. I mean, talk about putting that together. Were some of these people you'd wanted to work with for a long time? Where like we have to, get Michelle Yeoh or
Yeah,
did
It was
come
only
sort of?
Michelle, honestly. That was
Yeah.
the first, people always say online it was a Jackie Chan movie, but it was actually Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh. They were going to be the couple. And then when Jackie Chan didn't work out, we were like, well, Michelle's, she's right there. And the moment we rewrote it, the whole thing opened up and the whole thing transformed. It was like a beautiful, moment of clarity, which is rare when you're making movies. So she was the one we were like, oh, it'd be amazing if we could work with her, because we grew up on her work and, we kind of studied, we went back and rewatched all her movies while we were writing. And then everyone else just kind of, I like to say our movies are like a weird filter. Like you're either into it or you're not. And, it's either going to repel you or it's going to pull you in and you're going to never want to let go. And I think a lot of the actors that we found were the right people for the job because they're the ones who totally got the signal, and they felt compelled to be a part of it. And so, Jamie Lee Curtis, very similar to Pete Davidson. She read the script and was like, I don't get it at all, but it's not my job to get it. I'm just here to hang out with Michelle Yeoh. And her journey was really fun. I don't know if we have time for the full journey, but day one, after the first day of shooting, she's like, okay, now I get the movie. This is gonna be fun. And then halfway through the shoot, she's like, I didn't get it before. Now I get the movie. And she did this all the way until South by, which was...
she's done it 5 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, at the movie premiere, she was like, now I get it. And then we did a Q&A a couple months ago.
She was crying. It was after the premiere. We were about to go on stage for the Q&A, and she came up to us and hugged us. And it's like, okay, I didn't get it before, but now I do. But she was the right person for the job. She just totally understood. I am here to play this woman. I can fully embody that, and I can bring so much to that. Everything else, I'll let you guys figure out. And that was amazing for that role.
I was just thinking about casting. I think something that I fight for a lot of times is who to cast next, and there's a puzzle to it where
there is an order, yeah.
Where it's we shouldn't cast that part yet because we haven't found the husband. So there was a lot of we found cool people, but then there's this sort of ineffable nervousness of I'm not ready to cast that person yet, which is such a confusing part of the process. But I think it worked out, and there's something I'm not sure if we could replicate that just was okay, now we found Waymond, and that suddenly gave us answers of who else to cast, and even something weird that we've never talked about is a lot of the bit parts ended up being Asian American actors as well, but that wasn't the plan when we started out.
Right.
It was just as we went along, we kept finding these inspiring, cool people, and we were like, I guess most of the characters are going to be Asian American because we met Harry Shum Jr. Early on, and we're like, I think he should be Rakakuni's best friend, and then we met the Marshall Club while we were trying to crew the movie, and they ended up being the two brothers that fight with trophies in their butts, and it was because we fell in love with them and their work that we sort of rewrote the script and found a part for them. Right. But it was this slow, right up until production, we were filling in some of the parts, the smaller ones.
Yeah, that's worth pointing out. I find this was very useful for us. We're not really great at writing characters. That's usually one of the last pieces. draft after draft, we're trying to figure out the structure, and then the last piece is like, okay, how do we really fully embody these characters? And a lot of that happens when we cast the film. Once we cast the film, suddenly we look at the human that's going to play these characters, and we say like, oh, this is interesting, or this we should pull back this idea because it's not working for this human. And I like to think of it as like every human has inertia. They're just rolling through life. And if you can catch them and harness that inertia, you're gonna create something infinitely more interesting and surprising, rather than stopping them and be like, you know what, go this direction instead. Mm-hmm. And so with a lot of the characters, we're like, oh, this human's so interesting. Let's harness this talent or their history or whatever their story is, and let's put it in the thing, and in a way that makes sense. Obviously, if you just do it willy-nilly, it'll be disjointed. But like, if it makes sense, if the rhythm is the same as the movies, you can really capture some special things, which is why, Key's character is incredible, and that's just who he is. And so we just leaned into it even more once we met him. We're like, oh, he can actually pull off this sincere, sweet, gentle guy without it feeling cringy or eye-rolly. Let's just lean into it. And so I think that's something that is really fun for us, is rewriting after we've cast everyone. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about casting Stephanie Sue? Just in light of everything you were just saying, because she's so amazing in the film and so essential.
Totally, yeah. We met her on another project, and so we already knew her before she auditioned, but that was one very much in her audition. We were kind of workshopping a scene with her, and her take on the character was different than we expected. And she was just doing the Jim Carrey's The Mask version of the scene, just so unhinged and weird. And we were like, do it again, but different. And she'd do a whole new series of jokes, and so she became a collaborator, like he said, she has a filmmaker's brain. Like, some actors want to know about just their character, but a lot of her questions were about the whole movie, which is sort of scary sometimes if you don't trust the actor to tell them the themes, or but it really helped her a lot. And so she ended up really talking out the character of Jobu a lot and trying to connect the dots between Joy and Jobu, and workshopping all those jokes a lot. Even on the day, we kind of ended up having to tell the rest of the cast, just so you know, Steph might not do it the same way twice. Don't be mad at her. We asked her to do that, And she was so nervous to improvise with Michelle, but she went for it, yeah.
Amazing. Ellie, I'd love for you to talk about your cast. I mean, especially your two leads with Marie and Patrick.
Yeah, very much like Stephanie. They were really interested in the whole film and what's happening, and so Suleiman and I had actually been cast in a project together, and I was a fan of his. He did a beautiful film called Goodbye Solo that Ramin Barani made, and I think a lot of it, really the inspiration for that role, was me knowing him and me feeling like he was the perfect Father Patrick priest in my film. And then Babetita, I saw in the trailer of a film that a friend of mine was in, and she was in a little clip. And it was literally he sent me this trailer. He was like, oh my God, I'm in this film. And I was like, who is that woman? And he was upset with me that I wasn't complimenting his performance, and I just was obsessed with her. And she didn't even have a scene. It was she was in a supermarket aisle, and she just turned to camera. And I was like, I have to work with her, just her face, and and I knew it was her. And what was terrifying for me was she lives in Brussels. And so when we cast, it was right before the pandemic. And so this thing of not being able to see actors in a room together and knowing if the chemistry is going to work, I just prayed. I prayed that when we got to set that everything was going to be okay, and somehow it was.
I mean, the movie is, I'm exaggerating, but the movie it's her face and Suleiman together and the interactions between them. I mean, the whole cast is beautiful, but her face, and there's so many long, quiet shots on her.
Yeah, that's why when I saw her, I knew it was her, because if she just, everything, there's very little dialogue, even for her character in points in this film, and we are really carrying it emotionally with her. And so I needed an actress that could do that, that could just sort of, especially there's no flashbacks, so you don't know anything about their past or what happened previously. And so she has to be able to kind of, you know, give us a sense of what's happening emotionally through her performance. And she does a great job of that.
So all your casting was in Europe?
Mostly. I mean, I had an amazing casting director, Tanya Arana, who cast Cuties. And so she helped me cast most of the European actors because we shot in France. So I just watched a bunch of tapes and, you know, I really go with my gut, and it was like a lot of gut casting.
Wow,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Wait, Ellie, you said you were cast with your cast, like with your cast. You're an actress as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so everyone here is
So
an
we've got
actor
that, yeah.
except for me, right? You guys are. I just think it's interesting
Sorry.
because I want to. Yeah, it's fine.
Not sorry.
Not for me.
There's time.
Yeah, there's time. I'm just curious. Like, when was the moment? Do you guys remember the moment when you were like, you know what? I would rather be directing right now. Like, is there like a thing that a director said that you're like, I could do your job, or like what was it that made you like, you know, take that leap? Because I think it's fascinating.
I mean, I was constantly reworking people's scripts and telling them what they should be doing. And so a director friend of mine was like, why don't you write your own thing and do your own thing? I was like, you know what? I will do that.
I did the same thing. I was like a acting kid in high school, and my theater teacher was like, "Don't pursue acting." He was like, "You're too opinionated. Like, you roll your eyes. You look so grumpy if you disagree with me. Like, you're never gonna make it as an actor." Yeah.
I literally had just had an idea for a short film, and I'd never thought of directing in my life. Like, I wanted to be a writer. That's what I always wanted to do. And then I was acting, which I kind of maybe sort of wanted to do, but not really. And then I had an idea for a short film, and then it was through the process of making it that I just was like, this is the most amazing thing ever. And then I thought I would do both. And then I had a year, like right after I made my first feature, I went back to acting for a year, and I worked with like 2 douchebags in a row. And I was like, I'm out.
Yeah, same. I think. Yeah, I mean, not the same, but I did have some
the 2
experiences where I was
douchebags?
like, okay. And also, when I was 6 and I saw Annie, I thought I want to be an actress. But then I thought Annie made that film. I never, you know what I mean? And that's how I got into it. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, I have to do what other people tell me to do. And then I sort of like really went into that, like being with one director for like 6,000 years. You know, I served him like a slave. So, and then I was like, at a certain point, just it's too much. And I started to also become very, like we were touring the world constantly. And there's a very famous story of a dancer, a Russian dancer, who was on stage once. And in the middle of the show, it was a sold out house, there were, I don't know, 2,000 people. He walked to the audience and he said, "Little horsey is tired." And then he left the building and he never came back. And that was always in my head, you know? Like, little horsey is tired.
But you never had your moment. You never had this little horsey's tired
I didn't
moment.
do it, but I had it like almost like a
In your head.
you know those thoughts when they don't go, and then I was like, it's time to quit. And
That's a great line. I think we should all use it at some point.
oh,
So what I didn't have, though, was the feeling that like I wanted to be directing or involved in the story or directing in any way. And in fact, I think the problem I had when I went back to acting was, having been a director, I was like, oh, I can be way more helpful as an actor now. So I became unbelievably deferential, which is not a smart thing to do when you're a young woman working with older male directors. Like, that was like really misguided. I was like, I can be helpful and I will not challenge anything. And I was sort of in this mode of wanting to be so helpful to a filmmaker, and it was just, I had it totally wrong in that time, pre-Me Too. That wasn't safe. So it's interesting, like, I think now, in a weird way, like, yeah, if I ever went back to acting in 30 years when there's awesome parts like Jamie Lee Curtis's part.
yeah,
then I'll be
because
like,
do you want to
Oh, yeah.
go back?
I was
And do
gonna
you
say,
want to
do you
go
wanna
back?
come
And do
back?
you want to go back? And do you want to start? Is
Right. This is a good question. Yeah. Do you want to start acting, Dan? You ready?
No.
He's great. He has a lot of cameos. In
I have a
our
lot of
short
cameos.
films.
Exactly. It's all against my will. But yeah. Yeah. Do you guys want to go back? I'm so. I do think every director that I've ever met has a thing that is their strength, and that's what pulled them in, and that's what they lean on. And you know, for some people it's acting. For me, I'm more like an editing nerd. So like, I'm a computer guy. So it's fascinating that this is mostly an acting panel because I just want to keep talking about it. So.
And a dancer.
Oh
you know.
yeah, whatever.
Anyway. I want the acting career of Doug Jones, is the guy who plays all the monsters in Guillermo del Toro's movies. I just want to be a creepy, skinny guy.
But so the question is, do you want to go back? And then also, how does it affect the way you direct? Because I think that's really important. How does your history being an actor affect the way you direct other actors? Because I think if I was sitting in the audience, I would have wanted to know this. This is like very interesting.
For me, I do feel acting is the most embarrassing thing on the planet of the earth. And I really do. And so that's why I admire actors. And I do feel I'm obsessed with, you probably have, with making them feel safe, mentally and physically. And really, seeing them as my collaborators and like all the things you were just saying, that you want to really take them seriously and yeah, I think I almost feel them like, and I don't know that much about the computer side of it all and the lenses and I'm like, I don't know, but I do. That's where I operate from. And I think in the theater, it's just because in Europe you have government money for art, and so we really had an ensemble, for 20 years and that is very special. So I try to like take that with me in my directing, and I don't want to go back. I'm little horse is still tired.
Yeah.
Sarah, did you for a second consider playing a part in this? Did that ever appeal to you?
No, I didn't, but there was a moment where we were having a really hard time figuring out who Ona would be, and my brother kept trying to get me to audition, and I was like, I can't do it. I've just seen like all the best actors in the world like completely bomb out this audition. I guarantee. Nor do I want to.
Wait, what does this mean? He wanted you to audition?
Because we had questions about whether I could do it.
You had to read for him.
But he said to me, I said, I'm not doing it. And he said, look, come on, at this point, we've gone through our list, and we're so far down, and you would be on our list. I mean, you wouldn't be high on our list. But you would be you'd be like number 42, and we're at number 42. So, and I was like, so insulting. And I was like, while I was writing this, I did all these lines out loud, and it sounded terrible. So if we find anyone who can play this part and make it work, and we did. Rooney Mara actually make those lines work.
God,
Nobody else could. I guarantee it. So.
Yeah.
It is like the most sincere lines that are the hardest to say, and all of her lines are like so deep. Like she's such a dreamer, and it works somehow. It's great. Some of this is a leading question because I know you've talked in interviews about your process with actresses, specifically women, specifically mothers, people who have families. I find it all fascinating, and I am again alley-ooping you to tell this. I think your process is so beautiful, and I think more directors should hear that there's more than one way to make a movie, because I wish I heard that when I was younger. So.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think I would just echo what you said. I think having been an actor, especially a female actor, I think you think a lot about an actor's safety and how they're feeling and what's conducive to the best work. And then also, I grew up on film sets as a kid, and the people who took care of me as a kid, who I know I kind of didn't have parents for a long time, and they were the crew. And so I got to really see firsthand what the conditions were like for people driving home after 17-hour days, and people not seeing their children, and what that was like for their families. And so we constructed on our set, 10-hour days. We had an on-set therapist for the more difficult scenes. People, had their kids with them, like Rooney had her baby there all the time. And we just tried to make it, because we're in an industry, especially in North America, where there's just no regard for people's family lives, and we're really crappy about working conditions, I think, in this industry. So the idea was, and there's nothing actually more healing than getting to make an environment feel different than the one you grew up in and have some agency. So it was a really great privilege, and the producers made that possible. So.
And it's one of those things that happens from the top down, and I think it's one of those things that you don't know you can ask for, and I think that's something we discovered early on in our careers, like, oh, we work better when we're camp counselors, and so we run our sets like summer camp, and when you advocate for that, it happens because we're the ones who are calling the shots, and like you said you have to fight for the rehearsal time, you have to invest money and time into it. We do the same thing. We waste a lot of time every morning doing exercises, and it is every 10 minutes on set is like thousands of dollars, but we still do it anyways, and it's worth it because it just completely changes the energy on set. Jill Soloway has been doing this for a while as well. I feel like I wish when we first started out, I didn't want to be a director because I didn't see myself in the process. I didn't believe that I could pull that off or be that person. And so every director panel I'm on, I just want to just encourage people to find their version of their process that is going to not only unlock something in you, but also unlock something in your cast and crew, because there's so many different ways to make a movie, and I'm so glad that we found ours. And so yeah. Anyway, so when I read your interview, I was like, yes, there's more of us. This is going to be great. So it's going to be really, whatever the next generation is. I'm very excited to see what kind of seeds we plant now.
I want to try 10-hour days. Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about the ways in which you're camp counselors? Like, what do you do?
We pit people against each other, like they're in teams.
Yeah.
Like boys and girls are separated at night. No, this isn't true. Those are jokes.
Well, I mean, one of my favorite things is like on our first movie, it was so hard. Every indie movie is so hard. It's so exhausting. And our producer was like, what if I just like, we basically day one of our.
It was one of the Teamsters.
Teamsters.
I wish I could remember his name.
I think it was Joe. So
Joe.
Teamster Joe was helping out so much more. He was crossing all the departments. He shouldn't have been working as hard as he was.
But he liked everybody. He was really friendly.
Yeah, and
he kept like helping props move things around.
And then John was like, our producer was like, I feel like we should give him something, but we're all broke. I can't give him anything that interesting. So he went to CVS. He picked up like, I forget what he picked up, like it's toilet paper roll. It was like something so innocuous.
I don't know if his was the diaper, but it was like, let's just say it was Smirnoff Ice in a diaper.
Right, exactly.
It was the worst present. And he was like, here's the Never Took a Break at Work award for Joe.
Right, so during the safety meeting in the morning.
Next morning, and everyone applauded.
It was like, yes, and it meant
the world.
So
He
much
cried.
to Joe.
He was like,
cried.
thank you so much.
He's never been acknowledged by his whole crew. And then we're like, oh shoot, we should do this again tomorrow. And it became this thing where every day someone, like we'd be like, hey, if you see someone who, below the line, anyone below the line who is putting in a lot of extra work or went the extra mile, nominate them and we'll recognize them the next day. And we've been doing it ever since. Every single morning we recognize someone, and it is like, they love it.
On that movie, it was called the Poop Awards, the Producer's Outstanding Overachieving Person Award.
You can't take the child out of us. I'm
I don't
sorry.
know what we called them on everything everywhere. I can't remember now. But we had little medallions with a raccoon on it.
This time, our producer had a lot more time on his hands. I don't know why, yeah. But he made like custom mugs and custom like medals, and we'd give them out every morning. And yeah, it was so that's just one example. But we try to have this kind of energy where
and
people
some
are
mornings
looking
we
for
forget,
each other. Yeah.
And it gets too busy, and then people get upset.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't an award today.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, I want to jump to, let's call it creating the visual look of your films. All of these films are so distinct and different and have very, very specific looks to them. So it's obviously working with your cinematographer, your production designer. But, I mean, Sarah, maybe starting with you, if you could, your film, if you could talk through when in the process you decided you wanted to have the look that you went with, the desaturated look, and also if you could talk about where, I read you shot on a stage where you were kind of creating the external light, and how did you, just talk about that entire process.
Sure. I mean, I always knew that I wanted the film to feel kind of like a fable, almost like a picture book and something archetypal. And so I knew it couldn't feel realistic. And so I knew we wanted to do something with the color. We got really curious about the idea of there being just the tiniest bit of color, so that often you feel it's black and white and then kind of become surprised that there is color there. And also that sense that the film itself is an artifact from another time, because these women, it's being told from the future. There's a sense of nostalgia about it because we're looking back at a world that's already passed. The very fact of them engaging in this conversation has consigned this world to the past. So I knew that the audience would get all that immediately from seeing the color, the color choices. So that was the thinking behind the color palette, and we shot it in a studio because we had to track, the time of day very, very carefully, and that the sun really becomes a character in the film. There's a ticking clock, and there has to be that sense of tension that they have a very limited time to decide this. So that was some of the thinking behind it.
It's amazing at the end when you go out and you see the world outside the barn and everything. It's a great moment. So, Halina, I feel like your film is the polar, the other end of the extreme, where it's just like, it's
so
got
many colors.
It's candy, it's
poppy.
color,
Yeah,
and it's hard to separate the sound design and music also from the visuals
Yeah.
in your film.
I think we really, so I took my DP, Jasper Wolf, who is a genius from the Netherlands, and we shot our first movie, Instinct, also together. He did, for instance, a movie called Monos, maybe people know that movie. He's like a war photographer, like in Monos you can actually see that he jumped into a waterfall with the camera, which is totally nuts. So he loves, like, he used to want to be an actor, so he had a year in his life where he was an actor. So he feels...
Everyone but me, yeah.
There you go. I'm sorry, it's a theme tonight. You have to start. I will make you audition for my next film. Maybe. So I remember speaking to him because Instinct, again, is a radical, dark, sexual art house film. And I was like, Jasper, listen, we're going to Hollywood. We need to make like poppy colors and we're going to treat it like pop art. You know, and he was like, okay, you know, because he's so hardcore. So, but then he really got into it. And then we had this idea because 80% of the film takes place in the dark, right? So
Yeah.
then we were like, well, how do we light it? And Jasper being so art house, he didn't want to use any light, of course. So and I was like, what about candles? He's like, I hate candles. I said, what about the moonlight? He's like, kitsch. And so we only used the iPhones, you know, and then we had the idea to dress up Rachel Sennett as like a lighthouse and make her wear all these like neon necklaces. And that really also determined, of course, the whole visual style of the film. But the whole idea was candy, poppy, very much, and then of course they become beasts, right? They all that, the layer of the social media, the filters, it all becomes and they all kill each other. So yeah.
I love the way you guys shot. Like everything is flashlights, everything's glow sticks. It actually makes it so much scarier, but also it feels. I think it's also a product of its time, not just because of the script, but also because the camera technology that we have now can actually expose that. Like imagine shooting this movie 10 years ago; it would have been impossible. And so I think that's also why it was like very fun to see. It's like, oh, I haven't seen something completely lit by iPhones. It's like Gen Z, just even in the production of it, it's really. And then the glow sticks are amazing too. I think it's I think he was smart. That was a good direction to go in. Yeah. Fuck candles. Glow sticks are better. Yeah, exactly.
By the way, sorry, I just had a realization that when you asked that question, said, I'm not an actor, you guys were all actors. Was that a response to the fact that I was trying to cast you in my next project backstage?
Yes,
I'm trying to cast him in something. I'm not an actor.
Yeah. My mind is scared and is trying to run away from you. That's so fun.
Sorry, continue.
So to the Daniels, I mean, it's obviously a huge question. Your film is so visually rich and just overload in every conceivable way. Talk about how so obviously you wanted it, that was the overall effect you were going for, but how did you build that methodically heading into production?
Yeah, I mean, we're a funny generation. We grew up on just like classic cinema from the 90s, from the early 2000s, but then also the internet kind of infiltrated and became part of our visual language as well. And so I think our film kind of tries to bridge those two things where, you know, we're thinking really analytically about lens choices and aspect ratios and all those things. And then by the end of the movie, it's all blended up in a blender. It doesn't matter anyways, because that's what the internet does to all images. We were watching a lot of YouTube videos of like supercuts, where they're like, here's a 10-minute supercut montage of every time someone's kissed someone in a movie. And it's fascinating because...
It's kind of like beautiful and then gross and then existential.
But the aspect ratios are changing. The you know, some of it's like super out of focus. Some of it's like clearly off of a VHS tape. It's like, and I was like, this is fascinating. This is how people consume media now. This is how people consume stories now. And we're like, oh, this is a great way for us to, not only will it look interesting and be more reflective of how people actually see story, but it'll also give the audience a really easy shorthand so that when we're jumping between universes, they immediately know, oh, we're in the universe with the hot dogs because everything is hot dog colored. It's like pinks and browns and reds and yellows.
Our cinematographer, Larkin, we've worked with for like a decade, and we love him. He's so smart. We always say our work is like the ugliest stuff he's ever shot because like we like push him out of his comfort zone and go for such quantity.
If you're a DP and you work with us, it's like running like a marathon but with weights on your ankles. Like we make his job so hard, and he's there for the story, and he understands what the priorities are, and he's incredible.
But I do think we we wanted to ground the main universe and make it really genuinely beautiful and relatable and naturalistic, and kind of looked at like a lot of references for that. And then when we first started talking to Larkin, we were kind of willing to make all the other universes like kind of a genre spoof. Like we were like, that one's not important. And he fought really hard to find references that were specific, but still really would be like draw you in. And he wanted to take every universe seriously. And so yeah, the movie ended up being so much more beautiful than I expected, because he was like, no, I care about those. I care about all of them, and the audience should too. Wow. And so, you know, even in pre-production, we kind of changed how we were going to approach certain universes, and made the hot dog universe a lot more beautiful than we expected. And
it's also a 2:1 aspect ratio, which is Netflix's.
We went Netflix with
It's a
that
Netflix
aspect
movie.
ratio. And like the Rock universe, I was like, it can just be rocks, and he was like, no. And he fought so hard for us to go somewhere that would feel like a National Geographic documentary.
We almost shot it on IMAX film, because that was like that would be really funny to us. Obviously, we didn't have the money for it, but we wanted that one to be the one sequence shot on IMAX. But we didn't do it. Next time.
Wow. Hearing you talk about it, I find myself thinking it must have been incredibly fun to be able to create all those worlds, but also just exhausting, like the sheer volume of visual looks that you're
It
building.
was, but also we kind of like, while writing, we were sort of scheduling it out, and the production wasn't as stressful as the finished film makes it seem, because we just spent one whole day shooting raccoon stuff, you know?
Okay,
So like we were
right.
it was kind of like shooting a little short film, and the actors didn't have to do like a little bit here, a little bit there. They got to, you know, have hot dog fingers for a whole day.
Yeah.
And
Rakakuni was 239 anamorphics and was going for like 90s era PTA. That was kind of what we were going for. Just poppy colors, a lot of key lights. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so it was kind of, it was nice. You know, the crew, a lot of times we would spend 4 days in the normal universe, and on a Friday we'd do a weird universe, and it was kind of like a break, you know, to be like, oh, cool, we're going to do a fun little...
That's another summer camp thing we did. Every Friday was dress up whatever universe we're in day, and so the whole crew
I
would
think that
dress
was,
up.
Oh my God.
I think that was our
That's great.
cinematographer's idea. I think it was
Yeah.
Larkin's idea to
Yeah.
do dress up day. So there was like a tax day, everybody wore suits.
Everyone was like an auditor. My favorite day was when we were in the laundromat. Everyone dressed up in like laundry day clothes, which is like just like sweatpants, and like everyone looked like they did not belong there. And it was It's like it looked like we were trying to steal film equipment. It was like hilarious. But yeah, that was fun.
Wow. So Ellie, could you talk about creating the visual look of your film? It's so intimate and...
Yeah, my superstar is my DP who's sitting right there, Tanks Chan.
oh my God.
Thank you, Tanks. And the town, which is my producer's hometown, Joseph. I don't know if he's here. I don't know where Joseph is. Wherever you are. Oh, there you are.
Stand up, Joseph.
Yeah. So me and Tanks were just like, this town is its own character. And so with my production designer, we really just leaned in. We didn't have a bunch of different cameras and lenses. There was not that conversation. We made a micro-budget film. So it was like where we leaned into what was available to us and just the color palette of the town and whatever Tanks could get for free. I mean, it worked out. And yeah, just really thinking about how do we build tension and letting the actors' performances really do the heavy lifting and smart blocking and all of that stuff. So it was really a combination of like just being smart with using our resources and what was available to us.
I mean, the look of the film is gorgeous, and the color palette. It's a lot of intimate interior, like in a kitchen. It's not a particularly dramatic location. It's two people talking in a kitchen, but the way it's framed and the way it's edited, it's really gorgeous.
Thank you.
Did you know what town you were going to shoot in, or you went hunting and found it? Or?
No, I mean, we knew because it's my producer's hometown, so we sort of, in terms of making the budget work, it also fit the story really well. I knew I wanted to shoot in kind of a mountainous area in a small town. I wanted that like feel of like this beautiful place where you don't expect something horrible to happen in, and that town had that quality, so we kind of knew that early on, and that helped us build the rest of the language around that.
Totally. And then did you like rewrite based on kind of what you found around the town, or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we went, I did a scout, and then I just sort of like reworked based on the stuff that I found. Yep. Cool. Yeah.
The getting stuff for free thing never goes away.
Oh.
We're still, it's still trying. It's funny. The reason why we got so many lenses is because Larkin has built a relationship with a rental company over the years, doing a lot of commercials, and so he does a lot of work for them, and they give him stuff for free because of it. And so a lot of those lenses, like we couldn't afford all of it, but we got some gifts, you know.
On some of our other stuff, we would do a camera test. You know, but it was just the show. It was just the shoot. Yeah.
Wow. So I want to open it up.
those tips.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna be doing that for the
it's-
next couple.
yeah. But then he would, actually rent things from them on commercials where he had money. But yeah.
So I want to open up to audience questions, but I have one last question for the Daniels before we do, which is, it's a specific question about this film. There's so much film storytelling happening now in the metaverse in different ways. And I find personally a lot of it, the emotional stakes drop out because there's infinite possibility, and so the stakes just evaporate. And in your film, I don't know how you did it, but like I found myself crying at the end. It's so moving, the relationship especially between the mother and daughter. And like, how the hell did you do that? How do you do a metaverse storytelling that's emotionally resonant?
That was the core of the idea. I was pitching him my verse jumping idea, and Scheinert was like, multiverse movies are stupid. Like,
They are.
you don't care about anything. Every possibility just kind of cancels each other out, and you don't care anymore. It's like a choose your own adventure book that doesn't matter. You read an ending, you're like, well, there's 10 other endings. And so after he said that, I'm like, oh, what if we did that on purpose? What if we made a movie where you actually like made the main character lose all meaning, every choice lost all meaning, our character and our audience hits rock bottom and realize nothing in the world matters? That's interesting. And then we were like, okay, and then what is the last act? How do we pull ourselves out of that? And we realized, oh, this is such a beautiful reflection of what we're all doing right now. The question of how you survive in the noise. There's two directions that you can go when you're just bombarded with stories all around you. You can either become a nihilist and give up, or you can become you can double down and become even more dogmatic. And you're seeing both those things happening. You become an extremist, or you just give up. And we're like, if we can construct a story in which we can find a way out of that hole for our character, maybe we can figure that out for ourselves in our own lives. And that felt really interesting and meaty, and we didn't know if we could pull it off. And so the fact that you actually cried and you actually felt a connection to it is like incredible, because that means we did pull it off, and it was very hard.
I think it's like a certain part of our writing process that we discovered, years ago is sometimes like leaning into the thing we don't like. Actually becomes really like creatively fruitful. Yeah. So like we'd have a band that we're supposed to pitch a music video for, and I would just start making fun of them in private, and like, and by needling at what it was about this band I didn't like we'd suddenly find like a story we were interested in telling, and about commercialism or whatever, and so a lot of times when we're writing, it's making fun of multiverse stories helped us find the one we wanted to tell. Mm-hmm.
Even Swiss Army Man, like I really hated that idea. I didn't want to make that movie because I didn't want to make a movie about farts and
a cappella.
Exactly, or a cappella, or I don't even like survival movies. But like that was interesting. Like, oh, can I make a movie where I care about like the most basic semiotic thing, just the symbol of a fart? What does that mean? It comes with so much weight. Can I unravel all that and give the audience a pure experience of a fart? That was kind of where it came from, and so we chase after the things that we don't initially want to do, and some interesting thing comes out of it. So I'm glad you said that, because that was where this movie started, honestly. Yeah.
I mean, it's also just in the performances between Stephanie and Michelle. Like that relationship is so beautiful.
We're so lucky.
But it was totally unexpected for me at that point in the movie to see it move in that direction.
Yeah, I do think we made it really hard on ourselves, and then we all meaning went away, and then like you said, Key pulls you out, and then Steph and then Michelle pull you out, and if they hadn't done a good job, the whole movie would have been like the worst multiverse movie you've ever seen.
Excellent. Well, with that, let me open it up to people in the audience. We've got some people out here with microphones. So, question right back here. And someone, I believe, will come to you with a microphone. Yeah. Or maybe forget the microphone. Just
we can
go
hear
ahead.
you. We'll repeat it.
For Our Father the Devil, in the writing process, was there a moment that you wanted to possibly linger on with, like, still trying to figure out if the father was the person that she knew in the past? Or was there even a point where you were like, not even going to say anything, kind of leave it a little bit ambiguous to be like, oh, is it actually him after all?
I felt like organically, I knew eventually we needed to know one way or another if it was him, because the film is about how she comes to terms with that and forgiveness. And so if you're sort of ambiguous about that till the end, you're kind of like, I'm going to give a spoiler. Did she torture the right person? You know? And so the midpoint just sort of happened. It felt like the right place to make that reveal. And then I think the rest of the film can kind of come together in terms of what we're really dealing with and her own, the own stuff that she's dealing with and all the other reveals that, will come out later that I won't spoil for those of you who haven't seen it yet. Coming to theaters this summer, by the way.
Yeah, back here. Yes, you.
So my question is for Daniel, and I just want to say I'm originally from Taiwan, and thank you so much for making a movie that made me feel so seen for the first time in a long time. And my question is, what's your advice to someone who's new in the industry to how do you keep going creatively, I guess, when you're not sure where you're going to end up, where you want it to be, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question.
His question is advice for someone in the industry trying to figure out where they're going to land.
I'd say two things. First, find your people. I think so much of this this weird job we do is it's meant to be with people. It's such a collaborative process, and if you're not around people who are inspiring you or pushing you forward, you are going to stagnate or you're going to give up, and that's fine. But when we found each other, I told myself I wasn't going to go direct anymore. I was going to become a motion graphics animator. That's what I thought I was going to do. I was working at DreamWorks Animation at the time. So find your people, and then the other thing I would say is you never know where. You might have an ultimate goal, but you never know how you're going to get there. And really just be like water. Bruce Lee, be like water. Where are the opportunities? Because every opportunity that you take will give you a little bit more potential energy, even if it's not in the right direction. If you build up enough potential energy, you can go anywhere. And we never wanted to be music video directors. We just did one for fun. And then someone called us up and was like, hey, that was great. We want to hire you for a small budget thing. And we're like, okay. I quit my job, and we flew to New York. We shot a music video for no money, and then we were starving artists for about a year because no one liked our weird ideas. But either way, the fact that we chased the thing that was going to basically give us, again, a little bit more potential energy, I think did lead us to be able to become, feature filmmakers. And also we learned so much along the way. So that's all I have to say. Don't be rigid.
If you want to become a director, start by acting.
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of true.
And also, if you haven't taken an acting class, you should. That's I took an acting class, and that's why I don't want to be an actor. But also, that's why I'm much better with directors, or much better directing actors now. It's worth every penny taking an acting class.
Yeah, right here.
Hi, my name is Tom Howell. I'm an actor, and honestly, you gotta try it, man. But I wanted to kind of ask all of you, I guess, because all of your sets seem just incredibly fun and a warm environment. And I wanted to ask, what is your advice to an actor if you're not really experiencing that on set? How would we create that environment?
So the question is.
The question was if you're an actor, you're on a set, the vibes aren't great. Is there anything you can do to make the vibes better? More or less.
I mean, I've been on a lot of Dutch sets where I felt that. I think what you said before about finding your people, even in the small moments, finding another actor and sort of hanging on to that, but it can be horrible. I totally relate to it. And of course, you can always ask, like, I'm already inspired today that I hear that you ask for rehearsal time on a dress set. I'm like, okay. So even, you know, like, you can always ask questions. You can always ask, like, listen, can we change this, or can we maybe do this, or can we maybe make sure that, for instance, in the Netherlands, it's really normal for a lot of people to make a lot of jokes, even though you have to do a crying scene because we're anti-hierarchy. So it's always like, hey, you don't think you're all that, you know? So, and then you're like, oh, but I need to focus. So, and then I sort of ask, like, hey, is it okay if I take like a moment and we keep it a little quiet? Of course, this is an extreme example, but I feel that you can always ask for what you need, even though it's super scary, but we have to do things that we're scared of. I was told by her in her book.
I do feel like a lot of directors are nervous, like, and totally willing to hear, like, if there's something that helps your process, like, and you're not saying, here's how to direct me, but you're just saying, oh, I'm more comfortable if I can, like, go do some stretches outside, or loosen up a little and play music. Like, a lot of folks will be like, oh, cool, now I know what you need. Great.
Yeah, it is, like, as a director, every actor has a different process, and it should be their job to know that, but if they're not doing that, you can advocate for yourself. It's like, this is how I like to work usually. This is how you're gonna get the best work out of me. You know, I think that's a really good way of putting it.
And I would just also add, be the change that you want to see. You know, energy is so important. Sometimes, you know, coming to energy to set with that right energy, that positive energy, you will affect the people around you, and maybe you'll affect that environment. So I think it's important to recognize that, you know, that you have that power.
And I think also to know when you're advocating for yourself, you're actually advocating for everybody. And so whatever issues you're having, probably other people are too. And so you're doing everybody else a service by speaking up. I also think the crew are really your people, and like getting to know the crew, especially the crew that does not ever get acknowledged by cast. Often people don't learn their names, like the people who are, you know, the third and fourth and fifth electrics and grips and locations, and those are the people in my experience that have had my back the most. And I think feeling that sense of people and who really know the landscape of the set better than anyone, including the director, is helpful. I mean, I think if you're working with any of these amazing directors up here, yes, they're really open and receptive to like what you need to work. I've worked with a lot of directors who are not at all. And I think those are the cases in which I think finding your people is really the answer. And also just not letting the people in power dictate what you think you deserve or your perception of yourself, and kind of like holding fast to your own anchors is really important.
Is there an overarching theme that makes us do the projects we do?
For me, it's basically one question, and it's like, and it's so general, but it's just also what always kept me going on stage, and are we civilized or are we beasts? And whether I make a ridiculous comedy or a very dark other thing, that's just my main question, because I don't understand myself. I try to make films and plays, but it never works, but to get answers. And so that would be my question that I still haven't answered.
I'm pretty selfish. It's only like, is this a film that I want to watch? Period. It's only about me, about no one else. No one else matters.
I'm similar, and then also like, is this a movie I want to make? And like, sometimes we'll have an idea, and I'm like, that doesn't sound fun. And
right, water work is not fun.
But also like, not just fun, but also like therapeutic. Like, is there something I'm gonna learn, some way I'm gonna grow by working on this? Those are the projects that turn out the best.
Yeah, I think my way of phrasing is like, every project I'm trying to save myself, if that makes sense. And so like every project I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I, you know, you're always in the ditch, right? So how do I dig myself out of it? And the interesting thing is, as our budgets get bigger, our ambitions get bigger, you know, the things I'm trying to dig myself out of are getting bigger, and it's very scary. I don't know what's going to happen with the next movie, but we'll see.
I think it's for me it's about having a burning question about something that I want to walk inside around, something I'm really curious about that I haven't resolved. And through the making of something and the telling of a story, just mining that territory so that I have a more full understanding, even if I don't get it to an answer, of what the question is.
Great question.
Yeah, great question.
Let's go. Yeah.
So we have time for one more question from the audience. The gentleman down front.
So I used to work in the world of market testing movies.
Oh.
And I don't know if any of you tested your films, but all I kept thinking when I saw the Daniels film is, what was that test screen movie? Because did any of you have, if you tested your movie, did you have to compromise? Because even though I was in that world, I always felt like, oh my God, don't ruin the vision of the filmmaker. But then you're also watching how an audience watches a film. And probably the most I learned is the audience confused? Is the film dragging? I mean, when they change endings and all that, I always felt like, oh no, oh no. But I found that process of being a moderator and working that you learn a lot by showing it to an audience as you're working on it, especially with pacing.
Yeah.
But all I kept thinking is, and it's, if all of you tested, I'd love to hear it. Did you guys test your movie?
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what that test screen might have been.
Yeah, so in the back, the question was, did we test our movies, and do we like testing our movies? Did it change
Do you guys
anything?
test your movies? How does this work for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You did, yeah.
We did, but
Oh, yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, we both worked with A24. What was that like for you?
Yeah. For me,
Spill the tea.
her.
A24. I'm to
Me,
A24.
A24.
Yeah.
It's me, A24.
You work at A24. It's
Oh,
a, it's the
right.
movie
What
that
is
they
it?
make
I
your
don't know
You've
what
heard
it
of
is. I
them,
need
right?
that.
Yeah.
Wait,
They're a very good company.
Okay. Oh, there you go. No, yeah. So what I liked, so of course, testing for us as Europeans is very, or Dutch people, very new. But A24 explained to me that they would test it, but only for marketing purposes, which is great, for a filmmaker, because then you don't have to change anything. But I have to
That
say,
is uniquely A24 though. It's like, do whatever the hell you want, and we're going to market it to a T. Just figure out all the data, everything. It's a fascinating strategy.
But they did give me the full report, right? So they go through. So I sat in that meeting, and it really made me want to kill myself, because it's very professional the way they do it, and it's like it goes from almost second to second. And then they said, well, and my film opens with a very long tongue kiss, or however you call it in English, and that's where it already started. Like, no, that's gross. No, that needs to be cut. And I took it very seriously, but I
You
have
called
to
it a
say,
tongue piece?
Tongue kiss.
Tongue kiss.
Like a French
oh,
kiss.
like French kiss, right? Okay. Yeah.
Ironically, Americans call it a French kiss for the
Sorry, French kiss. Why is it French?
I don't
I don't know.
Okay, well, whatever. I'll find that out later. Anyway, so, but I do have to say, weirdly, so I was so depressed for 2 days, and then I suddenly thought, hey, there were some interesting things about pacing, and I actually opened up the edits, and they were like, you don't have to, and I was like, yeah, I want to. And then I also used the report of the test screening to put something back in that A24 actually wanted out. And I was like, no, but the audience wants it. And then I managed to put it in.
What was it? Is it okay?
It was a sexual moment between Maria and Amandla, which A24 was like,
course
we don't
the
need
audience
that.
wanted that, yeah.
And I was like, but the audience is really craving it. They want more to happen between the characters,
Right.
says the test screening.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
That's great. I'm glad it worked in your favor, because I think one thing we learned on Swiss Army Man, this was the first feature we had ever edited, and we were working with Matt Hannum, who had done a few features before us, and he's advocated for, he's like, after the first director's cut, after our first rough cut, we have to screen the movie to anyone. Doesn't matter who. Could be like your mom, could be the neighbor. Just you have to screen the movie to a couple people every 2 weeks. Just so you know what you're, like, because, with feature film editing, you guys know, you change one scene and the whole movie gets messed up. The ripple effect, and you will never know it unless you test it. And so you could work for months and not realize, oh, this one little sounds change, or you remove the VO here, can totally ruin the movie. And we were like, no way, we're not going to do that. Every 2 weeks, that's it's so painful to watch your movie with people. But
it was helpful, and we
So
have done
helpful.
it on both movies. But our version of it is that I prefer people who aren't filmmakers
Yeah.
in the room, even though I have smart friends who make movies, like I just want to know, are you confused or not? I don't want to know
That's exactly what you said. Pacing,
how to fix
confusion.
it.
Exactly.
So
And
we
when
did
you-
a ton of little test screenings on our own terms.
And you have to sit with the audience too. You can't just send a link. You have to sit with them because that's where you get the information. You can you can feel the energy when everyone deflates. You're like, okay, this sequence is not working. When people are laughing, they're engaged. Even if it's not like a funny joke, just even like a huh, that means they are processing the stream of images in a way that is like understanding or comprehensible. And so we did that. Like we did. How many test screenings did we do for Everything Everywhere?
I want to say like 10 or
Yeah, we did a
12,
lot. Just
a lot.
throughout the pandemic, we would just screen. Because our movie, we knew it was like a adjustment knob for confusion. Like, how much is too confusing? How much is too? Because like we knew we.
How many
won.
people are in a screening like that?
It's like 2 or 3 people. Every
Oh!
time.
Yeah, ours were like
very small.
I would say like
Yeah.
3 to 8. We did a couple that were a
Oh,
little
right.
bigger,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
at one point, but yeah, they were small because
But you do it on a big screen though?
it
Sometimes.
depended.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
the
You
pandemic.
get the
Yeah, we
money.
were just
Yeah,
watching
okay,
on
get it.
Zoom sometimes. But the funny thing is, we did hit an impasse at one point with A24. They were giving a note, and they kept giving it, and we were kept like, I don't think you're right. And we argued and argued and argued, and actually we asked, like, can we do a test screening? With completely random people, like, can we do a test screening? And we
And we're like, if anyone brings it up, then we'll
got it.
right, or then we'll have to continue the conversation. But we're like, I'm pretty sure no one's going to bring it up, and no one brought it up.
yeah, and they.
Smart. I'm
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
do that.
But it's
Great.
a gamble, you know.
It's a gamble. It is a gamble.
but anyway,
but the test screening went incredible.
We
It
did
was,
a full-on test screening with a full audience, and I went because I wanted to make sure that some idiot with a bad opinion didn't ruin
The whole
you
thing,
know,
yeah.
my movie, and it went really, and it tested really well as a movie, but then they left it really confused on how to market it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, yeah.
They asked the
Fascinating.
room like, is it an action movie? Is it a comedy? Is it a drama? And everyone disagreed.
Yeah, exactly.
My parents were the best people to test my film with. I was like, if they get it, everyone's gonna get it. I'm good.
That's great.
Pretty easy.
Well, on that note, we have to wrap it up, but I want to thank our guests tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you.